International break being played?
It's been fine. It's been fine. It gives us a chance, hopefully, to kind of reset off the back of what's been a tough run for us. Quite clearly, I think the unfortunate thing at times is you want to work with every player. You want to work with your full group. We've obviously had 3 players away in international duty, and we've had a whole host of injuries in there as well. That's not an excuse. It's just probably from that selfish point of view. You want your voice to be heard, you want your message to come across, and you want to spend as many hours on the pitch as you possibly can. I think last week we had sort of, from a starting 11 against Hearts, I think we had about 4 missing some of the sessions last week, which isn't ideal, but fortunately they're all back in the grass and they're all back training. But today becomes the first day that we've got absolutely everybody back together, with the likes of Brodie Spencer and Bevis McGabby coming back for international duty. So it's important that we use our time wisely. We will do it. I think we used our time wisely in terms of what we've done last week, in our days and our hours we spent on the pitch. But again, I'll just reference it. You want that to be with every player, but such as football, that injuries are a part of the game, and unfortunately people miss some of those sessions. But we'll hopefully make up for that in the next 2 days to make sure that our preparation's right for Celtic.
How much encouragement do you take from the game against Celtic here, but also the draw at Celtic Park last season?
Yeah, I think I've spoke before about, when you play against teams of that quality, with having a particular playing style that they're very consistent with. They don't deviate from it too much at all. They've got variations in terms of the players and certain patterns and whatnot that they'll work, but I do take a lot of encouragement from it, but also I look very hard into the preparation against particular teams. So to play against Celtic, to try and be successful, to make it difficult for them and to try and get a result, I think you have to work a certain way. And that's something that we've looked at this week. How do we set up? What steps do we go through? What measures do we go to make sure that we're braced and we're ready for what Celtic will do? They've changed their manager between the 2 games that you refer to. One that was appointed at Celtic Park and one that probably could have and should have been here, be it not for the last kick of the ball. But we take massive confidence from that, and we have to. I do as a manager. I know the coaching staff do, but the players have to believe that they can be very competitive in that game, like they've shown in the 2 opportunities that we've had against such a good side, with top class players, international players. And then off the back of that, I suppose Celtic will argue that they have their own challenges with the amount of international players they have, and some of these guys coming back a bit later, etc. But we just have to focus on what we think's right for us and what we feel the best game plan would be. But I think that we have something, again, I always talk about this evidence, I think we have something that shows that we've been really competitive and really good in both games against them, and we have to try and see if we can emulate that.
Stuart Kettlewell and Kevin van Veen gave an interview during the week saying he's unsettled in Holland, he'd look to possibly come back to Scotland. That's something Motherwell might look at.
What I can tell you is that I think everybody in this room knows that I have a terrific relationship with Kevin. I stay in touch with him, I speak to him. I didn't just like Kevin as a player, I liked him as a guy, and as I say, there has been contact between myself and Kevin purely on a personal basis, because I understand he'll be going through a challenging time at this minute. I've kept up to speed with everything that goes on, and we've seen that there's been a string of poor results, of which Kevin's been probably the marquee signing for Groningen. So undoubtedly at times he'll bear the brunt of that. So I'm not really delving into whether we can bring him back or whether we're thinking about bringing him back to Motherwell. There certainly has been, and I wouldn't lie in that sense, there's been contact between myself and him, but there has been for a period of time. But as you know yourself, would I want a top quality striker at the football club? Of course you would. Of course you would. Somebody that's last act in the Scottish game was to score his 29th goal, then you would love that person at your football club. I make no secrets about that. I think everybody would love to see him back in the Scottish game. But in simple terms, all of this comes down to money again. If there was an option there, then there would be a lot to talk about in terms of what the financial package would look like and whether Motherwell could afford that, because we know that Kevin took up a massive opportunity to go and better his financial situation, and hopefully for him it was to better his career, and we all respect him for that. I would love to have kept him in the summer, no question about that, and I'd answered that question numerous times. But no, very simply, my relationship stays with Kev, and I'm sure it will for a period of time. Whether that becomes an option to Motherwell or not, there would be an awful lot of water that would need to go under the bridge to see whether that was an option or not.
It'll come down to finances if
It does, everything does. You know, that sounds as if I plead poverty all the time, but I think people need to understand the situation. You know, it's not just as simple as saying it's a guy that has great affinity with this football club, with myself, the staff and the players. On that basis, again, I'm not making any secret. You would love to have him. You would love to take him back. I'd love him to be phoning me up to tell me that he was desperate to come back and that we could get something done. Of course you would. But very simply, that is all going to, things like that all come down to money. I've touched on it. There's been a lot of clubs that invest a heck of a lot more than we do in this division. And ultimately football comes down to it. You know, what players you get in the building, you know, what pond you're fishing in comes down to what you can put into it. So who knows what happens with Kevin? He's certainly a Groningen player. I have seen the comments that you referred to, so that probably states that there's obviously something going on at their end, but his next destination, you know, I certainly can't confirm that.
Has there been any indication to you from that contact you've had with him via text or phone call or whatever that there might be an interest from his end to come back here?
No,
no,
genuinely not. No, again, I think I've been as honest as I can be in terms of the communication, but there's been no conversation surrounding whether he's coming back to Motherwell, whether that's an option, and I'm pretty certain that there would be a lot of suitors for Kevin van Veen's signature if he was made available from Groningen, which, by the way, we need to show a fair amount of respect on that front as well, because he's a signed player, and I've not seen anything coming from their side of things to say that he is moving on or he will be moving on or anything like that. I'd seen the comments yesterday, and I can only refer to, you know, what I think about him as a person, which I think he's a top lad, and I know what he can do as a football player. We've all seen that first hand, but genuinely there's not been any conversation surrounding me asking him to come back to the football club or him telling me he wants to come back to the football club.
You were talking about using the international break to get your message across to the players. Given the form of late, has that message changed slightly? Are you thinking of new ways to do things to try and pick up points? Yeah,
we're always trying to evolve. We're always trying to become a better version of where we sit, and you know what run of form you find yourself on. Even when we're winning games and we're sitting top end of the table at the start of the season, we're always trying to push boundaries in. I need to stress that. It wasn't like we were sitting happy where we were. We still felt that our next win would have been round the corner with how we were playing and how confident we were. Yeah, but you always have to try and find a different way if something's not working. I think we've been really specific on how we try to play and what we try and do, and as such, what you end up with is you end up with a group of players that are profiled to play a certain way, sometimes within a certain system. But what I tried to do over the summer, as difficult as it was, I always spoke about being a hybrid, so that we had flexibility in how we set up and how we play. So I think you've seen a few different versions from ourselves, a lot of time coming from a back three and deploying, you know, three centre backs, but you know what happens in front of that is completely different. So yeah, we've worked on certain aspects that may be slightly different. But I need to stress this again, that there's so much evidence from us that, you know, the ways that we've worked over the last 10 months or so can be successful and it can win games in this league. And I think sometimes what you need to do is zone in on, without passing the blame to anybody else, we do need to zone in on making better decisions during games, and we have to make sure that we don't see the kind of nature of goals we concede against Hearts and a couple of the goals against Aberdeen. But that's actions on the pitch. That's nothing to do with your system. That's nothing to do with, you know, how you work during the week, because I watch the players throughout the week. I watch how they perform. I watch what they give us on a daily basis. And I don't see some of those errors and some of those poor decisions. So what we have to do again is make sure that we step up to the plate when it really counts, which I keep talking about, is when that 3 points at stake. And do you know what? The players are an honest group. They understand that themselves. You know, I can try and reinvent the wheel here with a new system and, you know, wholesale changes in our squad. We don't have a big squad, so the number of changes we can make to that is limited anyway. But you know, I can go and do that, but I don't think that's where the answer lies. I genuinely think it's that decision making when it comes to crunch on a match day.
Is that a mentality thing then? Is that something you need to be stronger?
Yeah. I think, again, I could try and dress it up a number of different ways. I think it is a mentality thing. I think when you're winning games, it was asked the question, I think Andy asked me the question the other day, was the late goal against Celtic a kind of pivotal point for us, and that probably had that downturn in the form, but even a lot would argue in terms of how we've performed in certain games, goals that we've conceded, uncharacteristic errors. That's possibly a thing. You know, that last second goal against Celtic probably there is a little bit of correlation there that, you know, we haven't quite looked ourselves and we haven't quite been as good as what we had been up until that point. I don't dig too much into that, but you know what, if that is part of it, then very simply we as a group and individuals at certain moments are the only ones that can get ourselves out of it. There is no divine intervention, there is no magic wand that tells you, you know, you should feel like this and you should do that at certain moments, because we spend a lot of time showing players what we think the correct decision is. But probably if I put my finger on it and you start to look at a particular moment where you started to see a little bit of lack of confidence and a wee bit of lack of self-belief in certain stages, it probably comes off the back of that game. But I think what we have to realise as well is we're playing against, in my opinion, the best team in the country at that point. It's a kick in the guts, but it's one that comes from a group that there's serious investment, international players and a whole lot of silverware from. So I believe we can pick ourselves up off the canvas, off the back of that, if that's what that kind of defining moment was. But you know what, we have to do it pretty soon. We have to make sure that we can't just keep going week after week with disappointment and frustration. We have to make sure that we undoubtedly get ourselves pointing in the right direction again. But you know, there's not been any suggestion from me or from the players that we're not capable of it. We genuinely do, but as always, actions speak louder than words.
You talked about being able to work with the players during the international break and the mentality there, but without making the wholesale changes, as you said, what else can you do maybe off the field to make sure that bond's there?
A couple of things, again, without going into too much detail, we've tried to have a couple of different days. We've tried to, what we'd always term, shifting the desks. You know, I think I'd referenced it when you're sitting at school, when you're in primary school and the teacher moves you from sitting beside your mates, and you know, just to change the focus and just to change the environment slightly. We've had a couple of those scenarios, and as I say, I'm not going to every part of that, but undoubtedly I feel that it's my job to try and make sure that there's a different feel, there's a different mood, there's a change of environment, allowing players the opportunity to maybe bond that wee bit more, spend a little bit more time with each other in different environments. Now again, that's all talk. You know, I'm a genuine believer on action. It's my job to try and facilitate that, but you only do that to try and see if you can get a response. You only do that to see if you can get your next 3 points or your next point on the board or whatever it might be. So undoubtedly we've done that over the last sort of, whatever it's been, 12, 13 days, we've done that. But what I insist now is that we get some sort of reaction off the back of it. But there's been no lack of thought from our side of things, when we speak to the players, how we speak to the players, because as already referenced, you do have to alter something. You know, the definition of insanity everybody knows, so you have to try and make sure that there's alterations there. But again, I always talk about it, and it needs to come from within, it needs to come from the group of players. And the one thing I'm sure of, or 100% certain of, is that they have got it inside them because they've shown it often enough.
Has the break been good for you as well, just to get a bit of perspective, because the games will come thick and fast? You're kind of, before the international break, maybe looking for answers all the time, when I think you referenced that, you know, you've shown that over the course of the 10 months that you know how to get results with what you've been doing.
Yeah, it probably has. I think it was asked a question after Hearts at Tynecastle, where it was an excellent performance from us. We get 3 points. Does this come at a bad time? And I think I'd said at the time we were so short in bodies and so short in personnel that I'm sort of thinking at that point it might be a good thing. It might allow us to get 1 or 2 back in a weekend without football and such like. And it's probably proved the opposite. But you know, once we've found ourselves in the run that we're in, who knows? I would suggest yes, because you want to spend more time trying to get your message across, trying to push the reset button. But again, I'm going to refer back to, we won't know until we take to the pitch. My job as always is going to be that I try and get the best reaction out of the players. When we've got the biggest task, in my opinion, going to Celtic Park is our next one back, everyone will acknowledge that's potentially the toughest game that you're going to face. But I look at it from a slightly different angle, that I think that it's always the one that you get to show what you're made of, what your character is, whether you can be receptive to a game plan and sticking to a task that's set in front of you, because undoubtedly there will be for this game. And I think that we've learned an awful lot for our players over 2 games against Celtic, if I just narrow it down to the opposition we play against on Saturday. And I'll be looking for more of the same come 3 o'clock this weekend.
How strange way, sorry, is it kind of possibly the ideal game, because it is so specific, a game plan, and then you can focus on that rather than try to worry about, you know, taking the game to the opposition?
Yeah, possibly. But again, a lot of people might throw at me that they've just put 6 past Aberdeen in their last game and got another clean sheet. So it shows you the magnitude of the task. It's a huge task, but. Yeah, possibly in relation to what you're saying there, that at times, because you spend so much time without the ball, that can often be the focus during the week. Yeah, we would like to increase our ball percentage at Celtic Park by 10, 20, 30%. Of course you would, every team would, but sometimes that's not the harsh reality of it. So we have to understand what that's going to feel like and what it's going to look like when we don't have the ball, and then sometimes the job is pretty set. You understand what your role is within it. We've tried to specify that in and out of possession as we always do. It doesn't change from game to game. But listen, we'll see. Who knows what it brings. The one thing I do know, having watched Celtic against Aberdeen, is that it's going to be a huge task, and they've shown that again throughout this season, that their record there is impeccable, and they're such a tough team to play against, home or away, but I think sometimes especially at home.
How you found the last couple of months on a personal level? Because when you first came in, you had an immediate impact, you got a job, and last couple of months the results have really dipped. Some fans might be looking at it thinking, I'm not sure. How does that affect you?
It doesn't. I have to be brutally honest with you, it's never something I thought about, and probably if you guys going back and look at my press conferences, speaking to yourselves over a long stretch of time, even when we were finding ourselves in incredible runs and amassing an awful lot of points, I kept saying, but what if? There's always a what if. There's always another side to it in football management. I think anybody that sits there and thinks that it's always going to be that silver lining is really naive. So no, probably if I can give you an example on it, that I always felt I was a better teammate as a player when we were up against it and your back was to the wall. That's pretty much been my career. That's pretty much how that's been throughout my career. And I always felt that I excelled in those situations. See, when you're winning and everything's good and there's no pressure on you and everything seems to fall into place, I never ever felt I was the best teammate then. So I've always tried to take that into my coaching and my management, that's where you need people to step forward, that's where you need people to step up the plate, and I can genuinely tell you that it doesn't affect me because I know what my job is, I understand how to do it. I'm hopefully personally amassing pretty good experience in doing this job, and I will always look to do it through good or through bad, because that's football, and it's especially football in Scotland. And when you find yourself at a club like Motherwell, historically there's good runs, there's bad runs, and you have to make sure you embrace it. And if it's a bad run, get yourself out the other side of it. Make sure you have the personality and the character to come out the other side of it. And again, every morning I get up, I look forward to that.
Surprised or not surprised to see Derek Adams back at Ross County?
It was, to be honest, it wasn't one that I thought an awful lot of. You guys will know that I've still got a lot of relationships and a lot of friendships up in Dingwall. I'm probably a little bit surprised. I think Derek was doing a good job, obviously, at Morecambe. But everyone will acknowledge and understand his history at the football club. I worked with him for his first 2 spells. He signed me up there and spent several years with him. And in truth, probably just my own opinion was it was a little bit of a surprise. I maybe didn't see that coming a third time around. But no, listen, there's obviously discussions that have surrounded that with Stephen and Roy and Derek, and they've decided that that's the best solution for them moving forward. So I don't really have too many thoughts on it, other than I probably was a little bit surprised when I seen his name come forward.
You mentioned at the start there that you've got a full squad back. That's been the first team in quite some time. How much of a difference might that make?
I don't have a full squad, no. Paul McInnes got a fractured cheek, and Pat Suarez a fractured ankle, and Lennon Miller has a fractured patella. So I think that shows you that we've got a couple of key players missing, amongst 1 or 2 other niggles. All I was meaning with the full squad was, the guys that are still fit and not in international duty. So from that point of view, that's the ones we've got back. But the other injuries are pretty significant, it has to be said.
I think we've got around 1/3 managers now have been sacked since before we've got to Christmas. Do you think managers need more time in Scotland, particularly when the going gets tough a little bit?
Again, it sounds as if you're trying to defend yourself. I'm not trying to defend myself from anything. The one thing I would say to you is that the fact that I now know that I'm the 4th longest serving manager in this division, I think, and I've only been in post since February, is a disgrace. I stand by that. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's conducive to any kind of development whatsoever. If you have a plan and you have a structure in place at a football club, you want to develop young talent and you want to try and build a way moving forward for football clubs, you're never going to do it in that space of time. But it's not my place to decide who stays and who goes. It's never going to be. But I will say I sat down with couple of the guys for the SFA, and you know, I don't think I'm disclosing too much, but they're doing the rounds at this minute in time and trying to fact find on why our numbers are so low with young lads at 16 to 20 years old making first team appearances. That's the answer to it. That's why those numbers are low. I think we would be one of the teams that has a greater number in that. You know, our academy guys, I think we've got a minimum of 5 academy players that train with us every day. Look at our bench again on Saturday, there'll be a number of them. You know, the minutes Lennon Miller's played for us, Luca Ross been on the pitch and scoring a goal. So we're immensely proud in that. But to be able to make those numbers better, you need time, there's no question about it. So if I try and link the two aspects, they sort of go hand in hand.